Hello, everyone. I am so excited to see you tonight for 10 different reasons. This is a who's who of the monarch world. And as Carol Pasternak, the Monarch Crusader, I'm so excited to start the new season of Beat the Winter Blues Talk About Butterflies Zoom series. And who do we have? A man who needs no introduction, the one and only Chip Taylor. Now, having said that he needs no introduction, I'm going to introduce him with a little bio. Okay, because we don't all know everything, and this is our chance tonight to get all our questions answered. That's one thing, and to tell how Chip has influenced us, or to tell what we're doing for monarchs in our little neck of the woods. So Chip honed his love for nature and bugs as a kid spending summers in Wisconsin. There, his grandmother owned an 80-acre spread that tantalized him with its sights and sounds. Chip says it was a biological playground for a curious kid. The river was just full of life, and I had the run of the place. I was turning over rocks in the river and finding all sorts of stuff that was exciting. There was a mystery to the landscape, and it was a fantasy for a kid. Chip earned his PhD in zoology in 1969. His subject was sulfur butterflies, but he became seriously allergic to them. So he switched his focus to honeybees in 1974. In 1992, when he was 55, an age where some of us are considering retirement, he founded Monarch Watch, and in 2005, the Monarch Watch Way Stations program. He's co-authored or authored more than 50 scientific papers, and he has assisted with the production of at least 35 documentary films about African bees and monarch butterflies. That's why every time we go to see a movie about monarch butterflies, who's there with a monarch saying, "It migrates 3,000 miles. Could you do that?" Laurie Adams of Pollinator Partnership describes Chip's advocacy and evangelist success in this way. I have witnessed Chip turn hostile community groups into conservation champions through his patient and prudent approach. No one on the planet is more committed to the welfare of the monarch butterfly than Chip Taylor. And on a bit of a personal note, he's been married to Tony for more than 55 years. He has 2 daughters that do him proud and at least 3 grandchildren. And I've talked about the format of tonight. You'll put your hand up at occasion and maybe I'll call upon you to speak. And then at the end, as always, we'll have time for announcements. So I am going to start off with a screen share and share. Well, let's try that one more time. I only practiced it 400 times. There we go. And here is a pretty current map of monarch way stations. And have a look at that. There are over 36,000 monarch way stations. Now that's quite an achievement to the person who started that. And if you look at the map and if you see your area not covered by enough dots, well, you know what you're going to have to do. So Chip gave me this picture of himself, and this is his post-COVID shot. So Chip, I'm going to call upon you now, and if you could tell us how you survived COVID, and did you have any hobbies or pets to keep you going?
Carol, it's delightful to be with you, and it's delightful to be with all of your friends and all of our friends who are interested in monarch butterflies. I love these Q&A sessions, and I hope we get some really good questions. I'll try not to be too professorial here. I tend to give long answers, as you know, because you heard me the weekend before last. We had a 2-hour Q&A session down in Oklahoma. that was really something. We got done with that, and I said to Ann, "I'm really tired." She said, "No wonder, that was 2 hours." I said, "I had no idea it was 2 hours." But
Well,
anyway, we had a great time, and it was a lot of good Q&A questions, and I'm hoping that people have a lot of good questions right now. Yeah, I had a wonderful time growing up under the influence of my grandmother and her property, which turned me into a person who was very much interested in wildlife, and particularly Lepidoptera. I could have gone in a lot of different directions in graduate school. I could have gone into fisheries biology. I could have gone into working with waterfowl. I was very much interested in ducks and so on and so forth, but I chose to go into entomology and work with insects, and eventually became an insect ecologist. And most of that is kind of history now, and we can go into that if you're interested in it. My transitions from one kind of career to another, starting out with a butterfly problem, working with coleus butterflies, or the sulfur butterflies, a really nice hybridization example. And I worked that out, but then became very allergic to them and had to move over to something less dangerous. So I moved over to the so-called killer bees. And then as the work on honeybees was beginning to fade and moving into genetics, and I converted myself into a monarch biologist of some sort. And lately I have been endeavoring to learn something about restoration ecology. So that kind of brings you up to date on my background. But to answer your specific question about what I did with respect to COVID, I isolated. I moved everything home to my messy office that you see behind me. Moved out of my office at my Monarch Watch, moved out here into my home that's a little bit west of Lawrence, Kansas, and set up in my makeshift bedroom office. And I've been trying to work from here since the 1st of April 2020. And it's been mostly successful. I've stayed out of businesses for 56 weeks. I didn't go into a single enterprise for 56 weeks. Yeah, I got all my groceries, brought out to the car. That worked pretty well. I went to a doctor's office or two, but they're all masked up, and that was okay. And I've got my booster shots, and I've been really playing safe. And I'm sorry to tell you that my neighbor that I was really worried about just passed away 10 days ago because he wasn't safe. And he's one of my best friends and best neighbors you could ever have. And I could not convince him to get vaccinated. So folks, if you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated. It liberates you, it makes you feel safe. And we all have to be that way. We'll all get back to normal the more people get vaccinated. That'll all happen a lot sooner. Anyway, I'm happy to answer all sorts of questions about myself, or about monarchs, or about where the world is going, or climate change, or you name it. If I know something about it, I'll say something. If I don't, I'll say I don't know.
okay then. Sounds good. So sorry about your friend.
Oh, wait a minute. I got one more thing. You asked me about my hobbies and what I did.
Yes.
I got bees again. So I got a beehive, and I got chickens.
Oh,
Like so
chickens.
many
I
other.
got pets. Okay, we've got the chickens and eggs.
So I got chickens, and of course, as a beginner with chickens, never having had chickens before, I had all sorts of problems, like as everybody does who gets into chickens. And now I'm starting my second batch of chickens because I've had some predator problems, let's say.
And how many chickens do you have now?
I've got 10. And they're
Okay.
coming along fine. And in another 6 weeks or so, they'll begin laying eggs.
Well, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I've got them well protected this time. Any predator gets at them, they're in real trouble.
Okay. My brother had about 5 tries and finally built a concrete pad so nothing could dig underneath, but he gave up eventually. So I wish you better luck than that. I want to remind everybody that this is a social event as well. And if you press the button chat, you can have private chats with anybody else that you see. Make sure you're clicking on just that person so that your private chat does not go to everyone. And Chip, I've asked a few people to talk about how you have inspired them, and I'm going to call upon Karen and Steve to first say a few words. So unmute yourself, Karen and Steve.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Chip. It's so great to see you. We were sorry we couldn't make it out to Oklahoma. We first met Chip in 2017. At that time, Steve and I were co-presidents of the Butterfly Society of Virginia, which was celebrating its 25th anniversary that year, as was Monarch Watch. So we got this crazy idea to reach out to Dr. Orly Taylor to see if he would be the guest speaker at our fall meeting in Virginia Beach. Now, he's not the easiest guy to catch up with because he is extremely busy, but we did finally find him, as I recall, salmon fishing in Alaska. And after a brief conversation, he graciously accepted our invitation, and we are forever appreciative. And we've had the pleasure of spending time with Chip at 3 butterfly conferences since that time, most recently in California in January 2020 at the Western Monarch Summit. And we just have to say with all sincerity, he is one of the nicest guys and the most generous people on the planet. And so from the bottom of our hearts, Chip, we just thank you for all you do.
Okay, then. Thank you. Carolyn Hebert. Sorry about pronunciation, but what would you like to add? I see your hand up. Unmute yourself. All right, then. Put your hand up with the machine if you'd like to. Go ahead, Kylie. Unmute.
There we go. Okay, there we go. Well, Chip has played a huge part in my life because how I actually got started with monarchs is my mom and I were on a trip to Delaware, and on our way back through Pennsylvania, we stopped at the Flight 93 Memorial. And my mom found a dead monarch there, picked it up, and we got back in the car and she said, "Look at this." And the monarch had a sticker on it. And we had no clue what that was all about. But being the researchaholic that I am, the next day I looked it up, and that's how I got connected with the tagging program, found out about the way station program, and we were already here at in our gardens doing what is required to be a way station. So I applied for that. And then that was in 2006. And let's fast forward to 2017, and I wrote a book, The Monarch, Saving Our Most Loved Butterfly. And never in a million years could I have ever dreamed I would be doing that, or that Monarch Watch would offer it for sale. So anyway, had we not found that butterfly with the sticker on it, I don't know that I would be doing what I'm doing now. So thank you.
Wow. You guys are humbling me.
Well, I'm going to have to add mine there because I sure would not be sitting where I'm sitting without Chip Taylor's help. So I was writing just a very simple book for kids just to get my pictures out there, and the publisher had a different idea that I should write more. So I'd raised monarchs for 30 years, but I didn't know a lot about them. So I got a homework assignment from the publisher every week, do something more, talk about the migration more, talk about predators more. And every week I do like an essay, like homework. And I had arranged very early in this process to get a scientist to check it for accuracy. I didn't want to, send it out there with mistakes. And and as we got closer and closer to the publishing date, this person kept saying, "Well, I'm busy this week, but I'll do it next week." And then, "I'm busy this week, but I'm absolutely going to do it." And you know what? I'm flying around a lot lately, and I'd say, "Well, then do it on the airplane. It shouldn't take too long." And then at the 11th hour, the scientist that I had asked to do it said, "I can't do it because it's too simple and the issue is too complicated." And my heart sunk. And, I just looked over at the research I did and I said, "This is the best I can do. And it's probably accurate enough." And then the weekend before I was going to the publisher, I wrote to a complete and total stranger, Chip Taylor, "Can you do it? And can you look at it? Can you fix it for me?" And he kind of said, "Well, not really. It's going to the publisher Monday." I said, "Whatever you tell me, I'm going to call up the publisher, tell them don't do anything." Anyways, this guy spent like half of a Sunday helping a complete stranger, going through about 15 mistakes that were in the book and explaining them to me. And without that help, the book would have been an embarrassment instead of a success. Now, we are talking about 9 years of my life where the dominant thing in my life is butterflies, and that would not have happened without Chip, and I have been always and forever indebted.
Carol, the best kept secret is I do my best work on a Sunday afternoon, as long as the Chiefs aren't playing football or I'm fishing.
Okay. How often do you go up to Alaska fishing?
Well, we've gone up there every year except 2020 for about 16 or 17 years. And I just always tell anybody who asks, life is too short not to go to Alaska every summer.
How many weeks do you spend there fishing?
Well, it's varied with my career. Once I got to be the advanced stage, then I started spending, a month there, and then 5 weeks, and then 6 weeks. And for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been 7 weeks each summer, and it's never long enough.
Okay, then. Well, I just saw Chip last week in Tulsa at the Butterfly Breeders Convention, and he treated us to salmon from Alaska that he personally caught, that he personally boned, and that he cooked. So that was a real treat. And I'm going to move on to Lisa to speak. Ask a question, or what are you going to tell us, Lisa?
I want to share how much Chip has exemplified or really triggered the butterfly effect, because I started raising monarchs with my kids in 91 and with my students. And in, I think it was 92, I looked through all the books and found some information in a bibliography of a book and wrote snail mail to, we still had dial up the beginnings of the internet then, and wrote a letter to him, and he wrote back, typed it back and sent to me, and that triggered my involvement with the schools and the communities. All of our schools have raised monarchs. Our public library now has a native garden with pollinator plants. Our teen library has a way station. My way station is number 129, so I'm super pumped about that. And so I've been doing this. We've got 2 monarch murals in our county, and I see names of the authors that I use their books at our local Monarch Fest each year. We've got high school students involved in that. They do hands-on learning stations for the community. We tag and release, and our whole county has embraced this, and neighboring counties, and it's all because of that butterfly effect from Chip answering the letter way back years ago. So I want to thank you for that, and we continue to march on for the monarchs here in Indiana. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I've got another something else to say to the group, because I've gotten a chance to see more who's here, and I am seeing people that I traveled to Mexico with years ago. So thank you for coming. And Holly is the founder of the Beautiful Monarch Facebook group, which grows in the thousands and thousands and thousands every year, and I believe is about up to about 62,000 now. Not if that's the right number, Holly. So I'm very excited to see Holly and Suzanne and people that I've talked to a lot on Facebook, but I haven't really seen. And so we're going to start with a cat now. Next, a Cat and Gail, whose name I've seen 1,000 times. Love your background. You've got your hand up, and unmute yourself and tell me whether we've ever actually talked face to face on any kind of Zoom, and then tell us about Chip. So start off by unmuting. Good.
Okay.
Hi, Gail. Nice to see
Hi.
you.
Nice to see you. I just wanted to say what Chip's done for me. I do my own monarch butterfly research, and I actually wrote a paper about my research, and Chip was so helpful for that. I asked him a whole lot of questions, and he was just like really encouraging. He read over it. He gave me pointers. So I just want to say thanks, Chip.
Well, you're welcome, Gail, and you're going to be cited in the next two papers that we write. All right.
Cool.
I mean, we've got these manuscripts moving along. It's an awful lot of detail and so on, but that study that you did years ago was one of the best. It really was the best early tagging result study. And so that, so it's easy to cite it because it fits with a lot of the narrative that we have come up with subsequently about the results of the tagging. So it's easy to bring it forth. If COVID lasts longer than say a year from now, my hair is going to be longer than yours.
Hey, Gail, are you a scientist?
This is my COVID hair too.
Yeah, I haven't had my hair cut since COVID started. So I'm telling everybody that it's going to go on until COVID is over, but I get to decide when COVID is over.
Okay, then I actually went to a Swiss chalet last week. Thought I died and gone to heaven, but it was, just little snippets of starting to return to real life. Gail, can I ask you something? Are you a trained scientist or a citizen scientist?
I have a degree in biology, so
Okay.
environmental studies. And I have some master's credits. So yeah, I am, and I work as a scientist. I work in microbiology.
Okay, well, it's so nice to see you. Lynn, go ahead. Yes, you could. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Unmute.
You were saying before how old my book is. I started in 1994 doing monarchs, and it came out of nowhere when I was teaching summer school. And ever since those experiences with the kids, you go right to the sources and you try to find out who's in charge of all of this. And when I did my book, Don Davis was my guy. He looked through the whole thing, thank God. But when we did a remake, I asked Chip if I could use the statement that he has on Monarch Watch about preserving the butterfly and dedicating it to, the habitat and restoration. And when he said that I could have that quote in my book under my dedication, it was like, to me, the most, oh my gosh, I'm chills now when I'm thinking about it. It was such an honor to know that he had said yes, that it was worthwhile, and it was, I felt truly touched. And every time we look anywhere, even today, I was on the site looking for milkweed information on the Monarch Watch site. It's just, Chip, you've just made the world of monarchs come into the lives of all of us who are just so in love with it and are always, every day, searching for new information, and you bring it to us. So I truly thank you. You are really something special.
And Chip, I have a
Thank you
question
very
for
much,
you.
Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn. Sorry I keep interrupting. Chip, how many manuscripts have come across your desk from strangers that you've looked at?
I don't know. I get a lot of them, and now we've gotten so busy that now I have Angie Babbitt, who's now our communications coordinator. I said, Angie, could you please look at this? I just don't have time. I've got to finish these manuscripts. I'm getting short on years available here, so I've got to budget my time a little bit better, and I've got to pass some of this off to other people. And Angie does a pretty good job. She knows quite a bit about monarch biology at this particular time, and she writes well. So in the future, I won't be able to do as much of this as I've done in the past, but I've done plenty. It's probably, 15 or 20 books.
Well, we're lucky we got in while we could.
Yes.
Go ahead, Don.
There we go. This is more of a shout out following up with Lynn's comment about milkweed. I'm absolutely delighted that there's a gentleman on this call who has done a lot of work with milkweed, and both Ba and I have traveled to Mexico with this gentleman. Chip will know Gary still. So glad you're able to join us, Gary. I wonder if you're in Vietnam.
Yes, I am in Vietnam.
Oh,
And
right.
it's morning here, and I had my picture off because I was eating breakfast.
Well, hi, Gary. It's another name that I've seen 400 times, and it's a pleasure to meet you. You seem to know what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
It's fun. It's fun to share. We've had quite a discussion on invasive ornamentals, I guess I'd call them, not just invasive plants. And I'll tell you, Vietnam is full of them. I can't believe, I'm just eating papaya now. I can't believe the amount of fruits and vegetables and stuff that we eat in Vietnam are from Mexico. It's just an unbelievable amount. And one of the crown of thorns flower, which you see all over Mexico. And I've got that growing here. And everybody has that in their yard. And absolutely thrives. But moving to Vietnam, I'm just finishing 8 years. And my original plan, I got taxed out of my house, and so I actually dumped it at auction. And they raised my taxes, they tripled my taxes in 13 years I owed it. And I said, I got to get out. And I sold it at auction. And I didn't have a plan of where to go, but I had toured in Vietnam 3 times. Each time was for like 3 weeks. So I've been all over the country. And I said, the last time I had been there, I took a road trip up through the highlands, which I'd never been in before. The butterflies just floored me. I couldn't believe it. So when I got home, I went to the Cornell Library to read about Vietnam butterflies and decided the books weren't written, which I couldn't believe. But it really was so little that applied. Now, I'm a little smarter now. The Thai butterflies are very well documented. Malaysia are very well documented. I always say that's the difference between a British colony and a French colony.
Oh, excuse me, Gail. Gary,
Yeah.
if you have something that relates specifically to Chip, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next section.
Sure. Yeah, I got interested in milkweed, not so much the monarchs. It was milkweed is what drove me. And in 2000, Bobby Gendron and I took a week off, flew to Kansas City, and explored milkweed that we didn't know any of it. For a week, we identified 24 species we'd never seen before. But in that trip, we stopped and said hello to Chip, and he took 2 days off and traveled with us. I couldn't believe it. And boy, he showed us milkweed around the Lawrence area. And I had said to him, I said, Chip, how do you justify taking 2 days off for these 2 hacks? And he said, Gary, nobody's doing this. Nobody's doing what you two are doing. And he said, I love to ride in the car with you. Just listen to you two talk. Bobby knows the Western species and you know the Eastern species. And just listen to your conversation. So thank you, Chip. And I own the trademark called Monarch Garden. Attempted to sell a milkweed seed for a while. Bobby was selling milkweed seed. He did a lot better at it than I did. But I tried to do just the wholesale. Career-wise, I'm a defense contractor for Lockheed Martin, and my normal work week was 50 and 60 hours. I didn't have time to do retail. I wasn't even going to try. But those days are over. Lost all my milkweed that I was growing in Central New York to phytoplasma, SD boson here, and she had similar experience with phytoplasma. But thank you, Chip, because great deal of encouragement there. They got me going. That goes back to 2000.
Wow.
That's a while.
Well, thanks, Gary. Good to see you. Good to see you. And I'm always glad to get to your reports from Vietnam because they always come back positive and excited. I mean, you're obviously enjoying life, and more power to you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I do enjoy it. It was an adventure. It continues to be an adventure. Monarchs in Vietnam, I got to say this. We own 4 acres. We built a house on it, and it's gardens, and it's wild. Got about 50 tropical fruit trees I'm trying to grow. Only a couple of them have bared anything, but butterflies are every place. And in my yard, at any one point in time, if the sun is out, there's 100 butterflies flying.
That's a lot of butterflies. You put a little enclosure over that, and you've got tourists galore. So people have already spoken. Please put your hands down, and now we'll entertain some scientific questions if anybody has them, or personal questions. Put your hand up, and I'll call upon you. And I'll start, Chip, with tell us. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the book by Sarah Dykman. Bicycling with Butterflies. She's the one who took this old beat up bike and rode it from Mexico all the way up to Canada and then back along the migration route. And initially she approached Chip asking for some kind of help. And how did you feel about that, Chip?
Yeah, this has been a real trip to work with Sarah. She's an unusual person for sure. Right now she's in Ecuador, canoeing down one of the tributaries to the Amazon, looking for frogs. She's really interested in frogs as well as monarch butterflies, and she's interested in frog diversity and abundance. And so she's going along these rivers with a companion or two and documenting all of the frogs that she can see. She'll be back in December. But when she went down there, I said, Sarah, do you know what a fer-de-lance is? Do you know what a bushmaster is? Both of those are really fiercely venomous snakes. They are along the riverbanks. They like the same places the frogs do. You gotta really be careful. I worked enough in the tropics that I've had experiences with both fer-de-lances and bushmasters, and you do not want to get bitten by either one of those snakes, or you're going to lose a limb, if not your life. Anyway, it's an interesting traverse working with Sarah because she is a free spirit and adventuresome type that will take on challenges that most of us would never even think of. And when she first walked into my office and she said what she wanted to do, I said, no. This is not a good idea. I mean, traveling alone through Mexico and camping alone at night, all of these different places, that doesn't sound good. And even bicycling along all of these highways, given how people drive, it's a dangerous course. And she said, yeah, but I've come from Bolivia all the way back to the United States by bicycle. I said, really? He said, yeah, I know how to do this. Really? I'm going, Okay, I mean, all I can do is say, hey, be careful, be careful, be careful. And what I did was then connect her with a lot of people along the route, and we talked about the various routes she might take. And so we went back and forth about the routes and where the monarchs would be at a given time. So we tried to match what she did with the biology of the monarchs as much as we could. And then, these things change as you keep on going. And she changed the route a couple of times to meet various people. So she did virtually everything that we talked about, more or less, in that first conference or two that we had in my office. And one of the things that she did was on one of those trips, she stopped by Monarch Watch, and we talked about various things as she was passing through, and she actually gave us a little talk about what had been going on. She synchronized her arrival at Monarch Watch with the time that we were having a spring open house and fundraiser and plant fundraiser. And she gave talks at that particular event, which were very well attended. And she's really a good speaker. She inspires people to think big and to imagine what it is like to travel with her, and so on and so forth. And another thing that happened, that I don't know if any of you have read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, but in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, the man who has written the book is traveling with his son across the country. And he's talking about the travel, he's talking about maintaining his motorcycle, but then he goes off into what he calls a little chautauqua in almost every chapter. And a little chautauqua is a digression about some particular event in his past, some philosophical thing. And if you read that book carefully, it's all about how to do science. It's all about how to solve problems, because he takes you into all of this problem solving, and he takes you all into scientific thinking. And I use that in classrooms a lot. Well, the way Sarah wrote her book was very similar. If you read the book, she starts out with in a chapter talking about the travel. And before you know it, you're learning something new about monarch biology. And this goes on, in section after section of her book, where she goes off in these little digressions that she kind of slides you into, so you don't even know that you're going into a discussion about monarch biology, because it all fits with the kind of narrative that she's trying to create. And so that's what makes it a really interesting book from a biological standpoint, as well as a travel standpoint. So it's wonderful in that regard. And as you probably know, it was nominated as one of the top 10 travel books of the year. And that's pretty awesome for a first author, and for a young woman who got on that bike, that butter bike that she calls it, and rode 10,201 miles or whatever it was, back and forth from Mexico. Wow. I mean, I couldn't imagine doing it. And if you read how she had to survive and how she had to do things and where she camped overnight and the little tricks that bikers have. Oh, you learned something about biking, didn't you? You learned about long distance biking and how you find a place to settle down for the night, how you manage to get food and water and home. I mean, it's a whole different thing, isn't it? About how you negotiate your life. And one of the things that's really amazing about her is she basically lives on $5 a day. One way or the other, she figures out how to live $5 a day. I couldn't do that. I could. You go to Starbucks. I don't go to Starbucks to buy coffee, but somebody was complaining the other day. You go to Starbucks to buy a cup of coffee, and it costs you $7. So, no, I couldn't live on $5 a day, and I'm wondering whether I can. I haven't figured out my daily budget, but it's a lot bigger than that.
Okay, so if you feel it's appropriate when I call upon you, introduce yourself, and if you have a group, give us the name of that group. Go ahead, Becky. Unmute.
There
Okay,
we go.
we got you. Nice to
Okay,
meet you,
cool.
Becky.
Yeah, hi, I'm Becky Wells, and I live where the river runs the wrong way in Illinois. I can see Iowa from my house. I live where the river runs east and west, the only place the Mississippi River runs east and west. And we just started a chapter of wild ones in our area. And I'm little president there. So I'm goal and I'm working on strategic planning with the group. And we are going to add at least 10 more monarch way stations in our chapter in 2022. That's our big stretch goal, is to do that. We've been designing gardens, and we've been starting this year to help people. And now we formally, have our Wild Ones seedling chapter going. So we're pretty excited about that. I'm excited about monarch milkweed because my stepson actually had a marriage ceremony in which they had it out. They were supposed to have it outside, but it rained. So we were in charge of picking up all the milkweed seeds off of the floor at the hotel where the where the wedding ceremony was. Yeah, and we planted that milkweed, and we call it marriage milkweed. So I have like a whole, maybe I'm gonna say 365 square feet of milkweed. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big patch. And so I supply everyone with milkweed. That's kind of my job in the little group here. I do my monarchs, but I do a smaller amount because I'm doing a lot of cleaning of leaves and helping the group do that. But anyway, that's kind of my story. My son actually lives in Mexico, not far from the overwintering site. So he tells me I'll be there some year. I don't know if I'll make that or not, but I'll give it a try.
Good.
Very nice to see you in person. Mostly what we've done here is just encourage people to report their sightings, become citizen scientists, and kind of get that rolling for you in the Quad Cities.
And what's the
Well,
name of
thank you,
your
Becky.
group?
Well, it's Wild Ones, Quad City, the seedling chapter of Wild Ones of the Quad Cities. And then we have another group that we've got a Facebook page going called QC Beautiful Monarchs. And so it started there, but it's blossomed now into a seedling chapter of Wild Ones.
Well, thank you, Becky. That's very interesting.
And Leo. Unmute.
Hi, Carol. Thank you.
Hi, Leo.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Chip. Anyways, I feel kind of newbie among all of you here with all these past experiences.
Is anybody else having trouble hearing Leo? We're all having trouble hearing Leo. So Leo, we could hear the first few words and then we couldn't.
Let me go and check the the settings here, but it seems everything is okay.
Okay, we're good now. Maybe it's because you're leaning into the computer more now.
Okay.
Good, good. Go
All
ahead.
right.
Start again. Start again.
Okay. Hi, Carol. Hi, everybody. Hi, Chip. This is Leo Silvestri from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. I came across the word the monarch by accident 5 years ago, actually. And then 4 years ago, I did what basically everybody was suggesting to do. Plant the milkweed, nectar flowers to attract the monarch among all the other type of pollinators. While I was doing that, I started growing the milkweed in my backyard and give it away for free to people in the neighborhood. And I came across a gentleman that came in one day, and he took me to his garden, and I saw a sign that says Monarch Way Station number, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember the number. And I saw two plants of milkweed in there. One was a common, and one was a butterfly weed. And I said, okay, well, why do you need more then? You know, it seems to me you have enough in here. Well, it says, you know, I like to have some more. So that aroused my curiosity, and I started doing some research online among all the other type of research that I've done before, but I never came across the actual monarchwatch.org. So when I went there, and of course, I investigated about the way station, and I said, well, the requirements are at least 10 milkweed plants, 3 different species. So I said, I got 25 or 30 in my backyard, so I should qualify for this. I went to the site right there and then, and I acquired the way station number 20046. And then I went back to this gentleman and I said, listen, you need at least 10 plants. You know, how did you manage to get this sign, you know, with just 2 plants? But anyways, that's when I saw Chip pictures and all his article there and everything else. The rest is history. But prior to that, I've joined about a dozen Facebook groups, one of which is a holy group, the Beautiful Monarch, of course. I got a lot of good tips from them, and I learned during the winter what to do in preparation of the following season. So I basically became known as the milkweed man in my area simply because I noticed that not too many people knew what milkweed was all about. And through the learning on Facebook and on the CHIP website, I learned all these different species. And then I found out what was native in our area. And I started collecting seeds, pass them along, give them away to people, do whatever I could to spread the word about planting milkweed. But at the same time, we start another thing called Raising Monarch. As Carol knows, our group, small as it is, it's called the Monarch Butterfly Enthusiasts of Windsor and Essex County. I think at this time we're about 3,000 members, which are probably half of them are from our city and county. The rest of them from the rest of the states.
All right, so this is like 1,500 people in you know in a local group that Leo has inspired, and you're being way too modest, Leo. You run lots of events. You've given how many tens of thousands of milkweed plants away? Like you've made a real difference in the Windsor area. Can you tell us something about the numbers or the lives you've changed?
Yeah, well, the numbers of plants are probably into the thousands. But what was more interesting was the fact that collecting the seeds from the common milkweed pods that we have tons of them, you know, in our county, by the roadsides, by field. I started mailing them all over the United States and Canada to anybody that wanted them. You know, basically, at first I started by paying for my own stamp. Then I realized it was getting a little bit too much. And people have sent me donations. Some have sent me the stamp, you know, for future seeds. But mainly close by, we probably give out over 1 million seeds through different events, different horticultural groups that I joined. I literally joined all of them anyways in the area. And wherever I go, if a person talks to me and wants to know anything about monarchs, he has to go home with a bag of milkweed seeds. Otherwise, he's no longer a friend. That's the type of thing. But going back to Chip, I was doing my best. And as you know, as you figured it out by now, I do have an Italian accent. I've never been to school around here. I've been painting houses all my life. And the word monarch and just the handling of one of the butterfly back in 2017 with my finger, it just changed me, you know, a lot. Sometimes I got emotional. I excuse myself if that's going to happen now, which probably won't anyway. But by doing this, I realized that with all these people doing the same thing all over North America, and this was the question that I mentioned to you, Carol, I was going to ask you, Chip. You don't have to answer the Chip if you don't want to. of all the articles, all the reading that I've done online, not one biologist, entomologist, or expert, or whatever you want to call it, has ever published something positive about some of the work that we're all doing with our own money, our own time, raising these monarchs, because we believe that somehow, somewhere, by increasing the numbers, someday it will make a difference. And all we're getting is negative input from every website that I can think of, every person, negative person, I call them, and other groups that don't think that raising monarch is the right thing to do. We are supposed to only plant, create habitats, and shut up, kind of way, excuse my French. But that's what this,
Good question, Leo, especially in the light of a brand new article just today came out on the subject. Okay, that's a great question for Chip.
Okay, so instead of well, no, I'll let him answer the question first, and then I have a comeback. So whatever make a difference what we're doing here all over North America, Chip, or if not, why not come out and say, stop, everybody just stop doing what you're doing and make it a law to make it an outlaw, a person that tries to raise a monarch, a butterfly from his own garden. I mean, do you have any idea why are these people always against all the hobbyists around North America?
Well, to answer you, Leo, first of all, the statement about everything about monarchs is it's complicated. Everything is complicated, right? So it's not simple to answer your question directly because there are a lot of things that we don't know. All right. So there is a lot of reaction, you're absolutely correct, to people raising, tagging, and releasing monarchs, or simply raising monarchs and releasing them. And it's complicated because, and a lot of this angst is directed at the commercial butterfly breeders. So the commercial butterfly breeders, as well as the amateurs that are doing this, involved in any sort of releases, are kind of under attack by the scientific community and in general, all right? And the problem with this is that we don't have really good data on the survival of these monarchs that are released. And that all depends upon when they're raised, when they're released, and so on. Now, Gail Steffi was involved in one of the early tagging studies. And she did two things. She tagged wild monarchs and she tagged monarchs that she reared. And the monarchs that she reared had a very low recovery rate relative to wild monarchs. So the question was, why were they less likely to get to Mexico than the wild monarchs? And we are addressing all of this in a paper that we're working on now. And there are a number of answers, one of which is that fall monarchs, migratory monarchs, that are collected when they're wild, constitute a selected population already. Because in order to be alive as the migration progresses, they have to be good. They have to be large, they have to be vigorous, they have to have been able to get plenty of nectar, and so on and so forth. And so when we look at the tagging data, we see that the reared, tagged, and released monarchs, people are tagging everything. They're tagging big monarchs, little monarchs, monarchs with partially broken wings, so on. So just by comparing these two populations, you're not comparing the same thing. The wild population is physically, probably not genetically, but physically different from the reared population. But that's not the real reason that people are objecting to rearing. They are afraid that a lot of the people who rear monarchs and release them are going to release monarchs with OE. and that is the electroshura, right? And that's a problem that we don't have enough data on. We don't know how well people are rearing monarchs and how disease-free they're keeping them. It is easy to actually produce monarchs that are disease-free, but we don't know that everybody knows how to do that. And because we don't know that, people are complaining that people are just releasing a lot of diseased butterflies. But I've tried to explain over and over on Duplex that even the OE situation is really complicated. So where you are, way up there in Ontario, you're going to have less OE than somebody is who's working in San Antonio or somebody who's in Atlanta, Georgia, because you have fewer generations every year and you're far away from the center of OE distribution. So the likelihood that your populations up there are going to have OE is much less than the populations that are further south. And then you've got what we call density dependent and frequency dependent relationships with OE. And it gets complicated. But anyway, we're trying to sort this all out. And what we're trying to do is point out what the probabilities are for a monarch actually making it to Mexico if it is reared, tagged, and released. And the probabilities vary a lot depending upon where you are in the country. If you're in the far Northeast, if you're rearing, tagging, and releasing, you've got a very low probability of getting to Mexico, even if you're a wild monarch. And it's even worse if you're a reared monarch. So there's this dynamic of the migration itself that distance makes a difference, because distance means you're on the road more, or get hit by a semi-trailer more likely, So, or caught in a spider web or something of this sort, because your travel time from, say, Maine to Del Rio, Texas is about twice as far or twice as many days as it would be from, say, St. Paul, Minnesota to Del Rio, Texas. So all of that comes into play, which makes it all complicated. But as far as citizen scientists are concerned and people helping out, I'm not opposed to people rearing. I just think we really have to educate people to do it the proper way so that the butterflies are large and they are very capable of migrating and they are tagged and released early in the migration. One of the other problems that we see in the rearing, tagging, and releasing data is that the people who are doing this tend to release their monarchs late in the season. If they're released late in the season, they have a lower chance of getting to Mexico. So you've got to be on the leading edge of this migration to get to Mexico. The trailing edge of this migration has a really tough time getting to Mexico. There's a tremendous amount of attrition. So it doesn't help for the rearing people to actually release late, release their monarchs late. They've got to release them really early, and they've got to rear them on living plants outdoors as much as they possibly can. So bringing them indoors compromises your ability to get your butterflies to Mexico. And we don't know how much yet because nobody's done control studies. Now, as far as thanking people who do citizen scientists work, there's a lot of that thinking going on. It just doesn't happen to be focused on rearing. In a paper that we wrote recently, we thanked the myriads, the thousands, the tens of thousands of people who have tagged monarch butterflies through the years. We thank everybody profusely. But those papers that have been published do not involve rearing. But we will talk about that. We will thank the people who have done the rearing and reported the rearing in one of the two papers we're working on right now. Sorry for the long answer, but this is a complicated situation.
Thank you. No, I understand. I didn't expect something easy. But anyways, I'll live with that for now, and let's hope that after your information will come out and more people will read it, and they'll think twice before they start pointing fingers and just condemning us, like on anything we do.
Yeah,
Leo, we're very lucky to have Holly with us, who runs a group of 60,000. She is very strict with hygiene and raising monarchs and keeps the group that way. So we have 60,000 monarch enthusiasts who are raising them, bleaching eggs, or at least they know about it, and very, very vigilant. And that's and right now we're having a discussion on the benefits of raising, and we'd love you to join us and participate in that, because there are a lot of benefits of raising them other than direct monarch by monarch contribution to the overall population. We can talk more about that. So we've got one more person with her hand up that we're going to hear, and then we're going to move on. We're going to wrap it up with announcements. And oh, I have a quick question for you, Chip, before we do that. Do you need a Monarch Watch conservation specialist in Manitoba? How many Canadian monarch conservation specialists do we have? I think maybe only one.
There's only one. If we had one in Winnipeg, that would be good.
Okay, then. Well, we'll give the Winnipeg representative a chance to think about how she wants to respond to that. And in the meantime, we are going to hear from Anne. Are you there, Anne?
Hi, I'm here. Yes. Did you want me to make my comment that I wanted to make when Chip was talking, or just kind of say how I'm engaged in monarchs?
Whatever you want.
Well, I was just I'm intrigued to hear the conversation about rearing, and I'm on Holly's wonderful group, and I have no opposition to rearing. I've been engaged in monarchs through the Monarch Lab initially at the University of Minnesota, and I am the volunteer chair of the Monarch Joint Venture, which both Don and Chip are founders and advisors. They're advisory board members of. One of the things that really upsets me on the group, and I want to hear what Holly has to say about this occasionally, are those friend or foe questions you get about the monarch ecosystem. People will find things on their milkweed and, should I destroy this? Is this going to hurt my monarchs? And that's the part that really gets my heart, because I want people to back up and understand that while monarchs are this charismatic flagship species, that among the other things that Carol, that's they're engaging, right? They serve as a gateway to getting the world to care about invertebrates. Right? They make us care about the creatures around us, and they're naturally charismatic because they're so beautiful and they have this amazing life cycle. Well, there are lots of ugly little brown bugs, and that are equally amazing. And so it kind of just, it's like a knife through my heart when I see people picking stuff off and destroying other species to the benefit of the ones that they're choosing to rear. So that's my little comment I wanted to make about that. Chip, I've admired your work forever. My own classroom students, whom I engaged with monarchs 25 years ago, it's how I met Karen Oberhauser, because her kids went to my school. They tagged monarchs, and it's really been a terrific thing you've done for citizen science, and sort of the beginning of citizen science where monarchs are concerned. So I guess I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, and your comment in general about all of those other insects out there. Yes, I know your pain in that sort of thing. And I can appreciate what other people are worried about too. They're worried about being very protective, but there's a solution. And the solution is that if you're going to rear monarchs in your garden and you don't want them to be interacting with these other species, rear them in a cage on a living plant. Otherwise, let them take their chances out there, because that's what nature does. And it's an interesting thing about monarch way stations, and we followed a lot of monarch way stations when they're first put in. And there's a really interesting dynamic here. when you first create a habitat, in the first year or second year, that habitat will really be used by monarch butterflies. And you will have your plants that'll be just stripped absolutely clean of leaves because the monarchs will come in there and use it. And they do it really well. But as that habitat matures, you will see that less and less often until 4 or 5 years in, there will hardly be a monarch that will be obvious to you, and you won't see those stripped plants. And the reason for that is that as the monarchs come in and as the area matures, more and more predators and parasites come in as well. In other words, the community gets more complex, the species diversity gets higher, and you have a lot of controls on populations that you didn't have at the very beginning. So that's the way nature works, and that's what we have to live with, and I think that's a good thing. If you want to go away from what nature's doing, you better put it in a cage.
Okay, then. Holly, did you want to respond to that at all, or would you prefer that I do? All right, well, I'll respond to that.
Oh, I had to figure out how to unmute
no.
myself. I'm not a public speaker at all, but I'm better at sitting behind the computer and helping people. But yes, in the group, the Beautiful Monarch, there are about 62,000 members. It's just unreal. I never dreamed when I started it that it would turn into what it is. We try to teach people how to raise a healthy monarch, but and we fight. We don't want to say fight, but there's a lot of people who they love them so much they want to keep them if they're ill. They want to keep them if they've got a broken wing or a broken leg, and they get mad at us when we say euthanize and call us murderers and everything else. And that's hard. The goal is to raise a healthy monarch. So, and there's a lot of them that, when you mention the word bleach, they're like, how can you do that to a caterpillar or to an egg? Or, it's like, it's a mild solution. It's been done for years, but there's some people that just won't do it. So even though we try to teach people the right way to raise a monarch, not all of them listen. As far as the other insects in the garden, again, you've got some of those people. It's like, those bugs are not going to be on there with my monarchs. And then you've got those people that, everything has a right to live.
Right, but generally the mood of the group is to discourage killing the predators in the milkweed community, correct?
Right. What we tell people, or what I tell people, if you want to protect them, then you have to bring them in. They doesn't have to be inside, but you have to put some kind of cage around them, or put them in a mesh pop-up, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So Anne, we'll follow along a little more, and we can all jump in and say to encourage everyone to live and let live. Yeah, Beatrice, I'm glad to see you here. You would agree a lot with that, and thank you for that, Holly. Anne has written a book, and she's going to be our guest a week from tonight. So I hope you'll all join me. And Anne, she's written a most magnificent book. And in fact, you should take my word for it and get it before next week so that you can ask her questions about the whole process. It's a big, stunning book. And if you think that mine is for kids and adults, well, wait till you see hers. You can choose exactly what to read to the kids, and you will learn something. I mean, that's how what wider range this stunning book has. And you'll get to ask her all the questions next week. You'll find the information of it on monarchcrusader.com. Hopefully I'll post that tomorrow or the next day, and you can join that Zoom as well. And then on December 5th, we're having Doug Tallamy. So we're talking about just 100 people for all of these. So you just got to register quickly if you want to hear Doug Ptolemy. And he's not doing a presentation either. We're just going to have a chat like this one. And I want you now to put your hand up if you have an announcement about an upcoming activity that you think will be of general interest to the group. Go ahead, Chip.
I want to finish my part with just a story that happened to me just recently. All right. I get an email from my sister. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I get an email from my sister. She said, I stopped by grandmother's old house and I took these pictures and I look in the front yard of the picture and it's full of milkweed. And then she goes around in the backyard and there's a Monarch way station sign. So my grandmother lived in Evanston, Illinois for many, many years and in this particular house. And I had to find out who owned the house, who's living there now, and why there was a Monarch way station there. Because my grandmother is why I'm here talking to you. There's a connection there. And it strangely goes back to this house. So I've made contact with this woman. I haven't really talked with her in detail. But the interesting thing was that she started a Monarch way station on that property 2 months after I started the Monarch way station program. And she registered her site as 236. One day before my birthday of 2005. Yeah. I'm just going, this is really wild. Why would it happen that somebody who is now living in my grandmother's house, who was behind all of this, create a Monarch way station, a program that I had started? That is just too strange.
Excellent.
It's karma or something.
Yes.
Are there any other announcements? Dawn, have you got an announcement about your upcoming event? Dawn, what's your last name? Davis.
We are having a Monarch joint venture Monarch conservation webinar tomorrow. It will be recorded. Speaking about the work the Monarch butterfly carries out in Mexico. But if you haven't registered for the webinar, you'll have to wait until it's posted for viewing. Okay,
then. Well, be sure to attend if you've registered, or watch it afterwards, because we really need to know what work is going on in Mexico, because it takes 3 countries for these guys. And Charmaine, did you want to say anything? You're on mute. There you go. Charmaine is our representative doing great work in Manitoba.
Thank you. Well, I'm not the only person here from Manitoba, and also not the only person here from Winnipeg, because I can see we have at least 2 other people on the Zoom site. Yvonne Sharples, who started the Manitoba Monarchs Facebook page last year, has done a wonderful job of taking us from 0 to over 2,000, maybe even 3,000 now, I'm not sure, members of very enthusiastic Monarch people at all different levels. Chip, I also represent the Monarch Teacher Network of Canada, the Manitoba region. And I've been involved with it for a few years. I was asked to join because of my enthusiasm with monarchs. And some of the people in the group you already know from years ago. I'd asked if they also had any questions for tonight, because none of them were able to attend. But you met one of our longtime members, Dorothy DeLay, who's also working with the And I think, Dawn, you'd also met her before. And Carol, you know Dorothy as well from years ago when she attended the Monarch Biology and Conservation meeting back in 2012. And Ba, I think you've also met Dorothy. So we do have a group that goes way back. I think if we make maybe an announcement, if you need somebody up here in the area, we do have a few good connections, and see who would like to step forward. Or maybe you have somebody particularly in mind for that. So I would just leave it open at that.
You know, if I could speak, Charmaine, this is wonderful news. If you've got that many people up there in Manitoba that are really interested in monarch butterflies, that there is a lot we can learn about monarch butterflies and milkweed up in Manitoba. That, I mean, basically Manitoba is a blank slate in terms of our intimate knowledge about what monarchs do there. We need to know when they arrive. So we need a lot more postings to Journey North for first sightings. We need to know how each generation develops up there. We need to know how the monarchs stage before the migration starts. My calculations are that most of the monarchs are starting to get directional orientation out of the Winnipeg area, or out of that part of Manitoba, around the 5th, 6th, or 7th of August. That's when the migration appears to start up there. But we all need observations of what happens before that period, what happens after that period. And we just need people to report what they see. And so if you've got 3,000 sets of eyes up there, oh, let's get the data, because that's what's really missing in Manitoba. And the other thing that's missing in Manitoba, because we're writing a manuscript on this right now, is where do you have milkweed? How often do you find milkweeds? How widespread are they? How abundant are they? And how many different species do you have as you go west in Manitoba? Because it thins out as far as I know. And as you get further west in Manitoba, you get almost no milkweeds per acre the further west you go. But you know, that's just my interpretation from the little bit of information I know of about Manitoba.
That's great.
But
okay,
you know,
we have
you need people to report.
Yvonne has been documenting this information on the Facebook site. And she can speak to this here or later if you want, I'm sure, and she will probably contact you.
All right.
So
well,
we have all of that information.
Here's the thing that you folks on Facebook should know. Very few of the scientists who are really interested in the data have any patience for Facebook. I mean, we just don't have the time to go through all of that. The data needs to be posted to Monarch Watch, or sent to us, or sent to Journey North, or put into iNaturalist or something like that. That's where the data can be harvested. It's not going to be harvested out of Facebook. It just isn't going to happen.
Okay, that's good. But for our group, she has been documenting it as a group. I would just say also that this summer, just in my yard alone, I have had so many mating monarchs. I have never seen it like this before.
Well, that's good.
I don't know if that means anything, but I'm just throwing it out there.
That's good, because that area south of you and a little bit west of you suffered a tremendous drought with higher temperatures than we've seen in decades in North and South Dakota. And it devastated the population in that area. The drought and the high temperatures really. So the overwintering population this year is going to be about half of what it was last year because of that drought.
Well,
okay.
Well, I'm going to end off with a few thank yous. First of all, thank you all for coming so that I could talk about butterflies and get excited about this for weeks. So you can't have a party without people. So thank you all for coming. There was some great learning going on all over the place, which I'm very excited about. And I want to give a shout out to David West. He's a counselor, city councilor, just north of Toronto, who encouraged his city to take the Monarch Pledge. And he has been having tons of events and programs and giving out milkweed and really changing things just north of the city, which of course affects me as well. And I'm very happy that he attended. He has a very busy schedule now because he's going to be mayor of Richmond Hill the next time we turn around. So I'm very excited to have David, who has done all that good work. And in Toronto, too, we've taken the mayor's pledge. And as a result, we have Monarch way stations all over the place. It's wonderful. And Chip, I really didn't think you were going to do this. I know you're in tremendous demand, but thank you for coming and spreading all this information and joy and giving us so many years of monarch conservation.
Glad to do it, Carol. Glad to be with you all. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
So you can all sign off now. I'm going to stay on a little bit more so that I can read the chat, which will not be recorded. And I'm going to turn off the recording now. Bye-bye, everybody.
Night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Have a good night.